I love how Fallout satirizes 1950s America, complete with its citizens buying into this McCarthyite hysteria about communists. Although not very subtle, I really do like Liberty Prime and how over the top and ridiculous he is. This robot talking about how much he hates communists and communism, while throwing mini nukes from his hands and talking about democracy.
America will never fall to communist invasion. Democracy is non-negotiable. Death is a preferable alternative to communism. Communism is the very definition of failure.
The satire is so on the nose, I doubt anyone could interpret it any other way. Oh no, perhaps I overestimated Americans. We need Liberty Prime now more than ever. This is the best robot in gaming history because it kills communists without harming any human beings. Liberty Prime is badass. I think America could use something like it. That sounds like the perfect deterrent for today. Lol, I have to laugh every time I watch this character from Fallout. I love the thought that they made a giant robot so patriotic that if it spots a communist, it will literally throw a small nuclear bomb at them. It's so beautiful. We need Liberty Prime more than ever. Can you imagine that these lines are actually relevant in 2019?
There's just something about a giant robot talking about how much he hates communists that makes me happy as an American.
In my Warhammer video last week, people were also talking about how people completely missed the satire of the Fallout series, a game that clearly is a massive satire of Cold War, mainly like 1950s America, and has lots of criticism about the Red Scare, but also about capitalism and corporate control, and how it often leads to pushing humanity to the brink of existence. Now, the satire isn't always over the top like Liberty Prime, but Liberty Prime, this massive anti-communist robot, happens to be like one of the most ridiculous things in the Fallout universe. So the fact that Americans today in 2021 are both missing the satire and actually thinking making something like this is a good idea shows that there are no limits to how much people will not understand satire and politics. So today what we're going to talk about the politics of the Fallout series generally. And unlike Warhammer, I actually do really enjoy the Fallout series. I've played a lot of the games and completed them, so I can actually talk with a bit of authority on some of these subjects. Then we're going to talk about the Liberty Prime stuff. We're also going to talk about generally how Bethesda itself has kind of missed the whole point of its series recently with Fallout 76, and how the Fallout series after Fallout 4 is kind of taking a turn for the worst. But before we get any further, I want to plug my socials and Patreon for about 1 minute, timestamps in the description. Skip this stuff if you're not interested. Before we get any further, a lot of my work on this channel is demonetized because when you're covering more serious, sometimes edgier topics, YouTube doesn't like this. So if you've ever enjoyed my work, please consider becoming a patron. And you don't have to pledge a crazy amount. I want to build up my Patreon based on as many people as possible pledging little amounts like $1 or $2. So if you feel like I have ever brought anything that's worthwhile into your life and my content, please really consider becoming a patron to help me continue to do this regardless of if YouTube monetize or not most of my videos in a given month. Also, if you want to join our communities, come check out our Discord and my subreddit. Those links in the description. And if you want to follow me personally, please check out the Kavernacle at Twitter, at Instagram, and also my personal Reddit where you can keep up to date with all my content and what I'm doing. For every 5k, we get a new chocolate orange. Help me get 55 by the end of the year. It's so amazing we might hit that. But then, of course, we can get another lovely chocolate orange. I also live stream on a Tuesday and a Thursday. Sorry I haven't been updating the second channel as much, but most of my streams are archived on that channel, the Kavernacle Extra. So before we get started, I guess I should talk about my own experience with the Fallout series. I never played the original top-down ones. I have played a lot of the Bethesda ones. I played Fallout 3. I never completed it. I did complete Fallout New Vegas. I actually played it on the PS3, which is like the worst version of that game because as your save file gets bigger, it makes the game run worse, like throwback to old school gaming. And I've also completed Fallout 4 and the expansions of that game. Haven't played 76 because it was such a mess, Maybe I'll touch it now. I've got Games Pass on my new Xbox. But generally, like, I really like these games and I like the world of these games. I don't really love the transition from the New Vegas 3 era to 4 because I feel like the politics have gotten a lot worse and the world has become a lot less detailed and it feels like a more binary thing. So for those of you who don't know what Fallout is about, Fallout is essentially a post-nuclear apocalypse world set 200 years after the bombs originally fell in a war between communist China and America. And it takes place across various American states. So New Vegas is of course set around New Vegas and Nevada, where Fallout 3 is set in Washington, DC, and Fallout 4 is set in New England, mainly Boston. Now, I'm not sure if I'll play this yet, maybe I will. There's a good short film at the start of Fallout 4 that essentially describes what happens.
Something miraculous happened. We began to use atomic energy not as a weapon, but as a nearly limitless source of power. People enjoyed luxuries once thought the realm of science fiction. Domestic robots, fusion-powered cars, portable computers. But then, in the 21st century, people awoke from the American dream. Years of consumption led to shortages of every major resource. The entire world unraveled. Peace became a distant memory.
But also, by the time the bombs fall in this game, there's been like massive resource wars which actually kick off the war between communist China and the US. China actually invades Alaska to get its oil, and the US annexes Canada, and the US essentially becomes this like fascist authoritarian state. And the politics also are, there's a company called Vault Tech which makes these underground vaults for people to survive the nuclear apocalypse, but only a couple of them work as intended. The rest are actually secret experiments, and there's hints in the lore that Vault-Tec might have actually launched the first nuke to cause nuclear Armageddon, which of course is like a nice little commentary on capitalism there as well. But anti-communism isn't like rife in like the contemporary universe. It's there, people talk about it, various factions kind of allude to how they feel about it, but basically because it's set in America, the aftermath of the war is you have various factions vying for power. So the Enclave are like this fascist group which is the successor state essentially to the United States government. It's where the president fled to this like oil rig, and over the centuries they like monitor the wasteland before coming back. Their whole outlook on humanity is that like they're the only like pure humans, and like radiated humans in the wastelands and various different like mutated species of humans in other races, they should all be killed essentially. Then you have other factions like the Brotherhood of Steel who are kind of like that, and especially in Fallout 4 they are very like that because they hate super mutants, they hate androids, or the simps as they're known. So in Fallout 4 especially, they're very fascist too. So just before we move into like the communist stuff, I guess my problem with how the Fallout series has changed, you have something like New Vegas which presents like all these political systems as different factions. Like you have the NCR, who are clearly like a throwback to like neoliberal democracy. You have Caesar's Legion, which of course are like a throwback to ancient Rome, but also like this totalitarian fascist state. And then you have other stuff like Mr. House, who is like literally like 1984. You have like the Brotherhood and the Great Khans, and you have various like interesting factions, and there's lots of nuance involved and lots of nice little political things going for it. But in Fallout 4, for me personally, if you're playing as someone who's trying to be like a bit politically conscious, the only faction you're going to pick is the Railroad, obviously inspired by the Underground Railroad from the time of slavery, and these people essentially are trying to free the androids, free the simps, and there isn't many downsides to them generally. Where the Institute is one faction which is like very technologically advanced, but they use this like slave race of simps, so in my opinion they're bad. The Brotherhood of Steel want to destroy the Institute, destroy all the simps, and kill all the super mutants. Bad in my opinion. So it feels in my opinion the politics has been simplified a lot more, where it's for someone like me a very easy choice, where in New Vegas it feels like every choice is kind of bad, But in Fallout 4, I have a clean conscience in that, like, I'm helping the side that seem, on the surface at least, to be the most morally righteous. But generally, this game is a big critique of, like, capitalism, corporations, and of course, a massive satire of 1950s America, including McCarthyism. And this is how you have this robot called Liberty Prime, who was created by the United States during the War of China to fight the Chinese in Alaska. It was never actually deployed because it used way too much power, but it essentially is an extremely powerful robot that can throw mini nuclear warheads while screaming like pretty much how great America is, how free America is, how he's going to bring freedom to people. Honestly, pretty hilarious, cool design and everything like that.
Initiating Directive 7395. Destroy all communists. Embrace democracy, or you will be eradicated. Democracy is truth. Communism is death. Honoring the fallen is the duty of every red-blooded American. Only together can we stop the spread of communism. Accessing dictionary database. Entry: communism. A form of government in which the state controls everything, and people are denied freedom. I am Liberty Prime. I am America.
But it seems like I showed you in the comments at the start, many people, many people have completely missed the point of Fallout and Liberty Prime himself. So if you type Liberty Prime into Twitter, you get so many accounts that are modeled after him. So here you have Liberty Prime, and then it has the Hong Kong flag in his background, and it has political beliefs. Police reform, yes. Less or no more taxes, yes. LGBT rights and gay marriage, yes. Federal mandates, no. Free speech, yes. Gun rights, yes. Trans rights, yes. Communism, no. So this is one of like the better accounts, because at least he supports some like social policies, but he is like a big libertarian. But he is at the same time retweeting Donald Trump Jr., and then retweeting this tweet. Wikipedia says the idea of cultural Marxism is a conspiracy theory. Also retweeting people like Andy No, who are tweeting fear-mongering about China, which is specifically the point of Liberty Prime criticizing McCarthyite hysteria about communists. But yeah, if you just go through, like I've got a lot of screenshots on screen for you, Liberty Prime, and most of these people will have tweets either tweeting about China or retweeting China, or just tweeting generally like very American conservative things, a lot of far-right stuff. As of course you guys know, I believe that American conservatism is essentially a far-right ideology. But yeah, there are so many Liberty Prime Twitter accounts that post his quotes and basically cosplay as him unironically. Now it gets even worse if you type in Liberty Prime into YouTube and read the comments of any of these videos. Basically, loads of people saying they want to kill communists, communists aren't human, and Liberty Prime is really base. And how is that for completely missing satire and also being such an idiot that this robot's whole existence is criticizing your political beliefs? So I've read some of these comments, but want to go a bit further into them. So someone's, of course, saying this is the best robot in gaming history because it kills communists without harming any human beings. How charming. Liberty Prime, the Iron Giant with 90% more patriotism. So of course, like this guy saying it at the start, I think America could use something like it. It sounds like the perfect deterrent for today. We need Liberty Prime more now than ever. I'm British and this makes me feel patriotic to America. I suppose you could relate to this video with the whole Brexit vote going on. Yeah, you're right. Vote leave, take back control. I love the thought they made a giant robot so patriotic that if it spots a communist, it will literally throw a small nuke at them. It's so beautiful. It is the greatest video games concept of all time. We need Liberty Prime right now. Those aren't atomic bombs, they're red pills. Hell yeah, all hail America. We need Liberty Prime more than ever. The dislike is from a communist. Please, we really do. Couldn't agree more. They should blast this in Hong Kong. Death is a verbal alternative to communism. I will pay someone to do that, I swear to God. Someone has to get on that. Bethesda, no, it's satirical. You can't take it seriously. Literally every true red-blooded American. Better dead than red. The difference between parody and reality stops when absurdity seeps into reality. Based. Satirical or not, it's still fun to hear robots say it. They tried to make a parody but ended up creating something unironically based, and I'm not even American. Communism is the literal definition of failure, pretty much. Can you imagine that these lines are actually relevant in 2019, implying that they never were pre-Blizzard Chinagate? Someone should blast this on Chaz. Yes, blast it on every loudspeaker outside their border. Play this at Portland 24/7 so their heads can explode. It's funny how years later this has become very, very relevant to today's society. Bernie Sanders' worst nightmare. We need Liberty Prime now. So it's funny how they're saying, like, it's unironically based. This guy is great, and even though Bethesda and the people who made the Fallout games and made Liberty Prime set out to make like a very, very obvious satire, probably like one of the most obvious satires I've ever seen in my life, and people are saying, well, if it's true, then it's not satire anymore. The fact Bethesda made a game which criticizes like xenophobic, racist, anti-communism and shows the disastrous consequences of that way of thinking and that hive mind way of thinking, and people look at that and say, actually that's good, is just so crazy to me. Not surprising, a lot of these people are of course Americans. Americans are going through what it seems like is the third Red Scare at the moment with how they talk about Chinese people and believe essentially all Chinese people, including Chinese students, are essentially an extension of the Chinese government. They're saying Liberty Prime is on the nose as like a commentary on today. He's on the nose as a satire that is depressingly even more relevant because he's literally talking about China in this game as well. But I think there's problems with Bethesda generally as a company going forward because they themselves have seemed to miss the point of their games with their exploitative, microtransaction-ridden MMO, I guess, Fallout 76. Now, the writing was kind of on the wall when they posted this tweet in 2018. So, Fallout July 4th message featuring Liberty Prime divides Bethesda fans. Bethesda celebrated 4th of July Independence Day with a nice message from Liberty Prime, the patriotic destroyer of worlds that advocate for democracy. The only problem is that it's hard to tell if the post was made in good fun or genuine intent, thanks to the many layers of satire both Fallout and Liberty Prime are steeped in. The questions began almost immediately when Bethesda posted a picture of Liberty Prime and tweeted the words, "Democracy will never be defeated," and here's the tweet for you. The problem is that, like other aspects of Fallout, Liberty Prime is a satire of the United States, or at least it's supposed to be. It's hard to look at this post seriously without questioning whether or not it's supposed to be taken with the same irony the franchise is known for, or if the message is meant to be taken at face value, which comes with its own problems. Has Bethesda misread its own political satire, or is this the result of a viral message gone wrong, with Bethesda forgetting the subtext for an easy way to wish people a happy 4th of July? It's hard to say. And then Alton tweeting, people posting the lines from Liberty Prime in the replies, unironically clearly did not understand that he was supposed to be a parody of the jingoistic, communist, paranoid attitude of the era that caused the nuclear apocalypse in the first place. Gamers. So those sorts of like tweets and Fallout 4 itself makes me believe that like the Fallout series like commentary is getting a bit weaker in general. Fun to see that like there are communist people playing Fallout 76 and kind of using this to set up their own like little communities. So they actually released a bundle where you can like have a lot of this communist aesthetic. So Fallout 76 fans are using the shop cosmetics to go full communist. So recently Bethesda has rolled out a sale called Redshift for atomic points which can be purchased with either real money or earned via in-game achievements. Players can pick a whole range of communism-themed cosmetics like weapon skins and wallpapers. One item is a junk collecting robot that keeps filling up its owner's stashes with communist propaganda, while the others allows the player to dress up as a communist spy. Most fans are taking these cosmetics in good humour, and it sparks some tongue-in-cheek communism versus capitalism discourse on the game's subreddit. Other players are going all in on the fantasy of being communist in post-apocalyptic America. I spoke to one player, Molly, who set up a camp with all the new cosmetics close to Vault 76, the opening area. She prepares drop-off bags of stim packs, purified water and medicine, and then waits for new players to want the buy. That's when I recruit them, she tells me. If the game didn't want me to set up a bunch of anti-capitalist decor and use them to try and sway the proletariat to a brighter future, they shouldn't have had the enemies drop union protest signs that I can set up on my walls. For players like Molly, the chances chance to be a communist in the Fallout setting makes for a great roleplay premise. It's like, okay, I don't really want to rebuild traditional America because that America isn't too great. If I'm going to be doing an escapist power fantasy, I might as well go the whole hog, right? I can start a communist paradise. Comrades get all the purified water they can drink. Everyone else gets a guillotine. It's dumb, but it's fun, and I've made way more friends in the game doing this than anything else. While playing, I encountered another player during an open world event who had put on the communist spy outfit, along with a thick pair of sunglasses and a large mustache. As we all moved through the route and protected a trade caravan, this player exclaimed over voice chat how much they loved capitalism in America and beseeched us to allow them into our camps. Now, like it was saying, the Fallout subreddit is kind of divided on this, so this commie bundle should flag anyone who purchased it and have Mr. Gutsy's constantly hunting them down. Communism is detected on American soil, lethal force engaged. I'm not a communist sympathizer, but the PA looks sick. Sorry, Liberty Prime, democracy another time. I agree the power armor is dope, and I like the voiceover thing. Other than that, communism can get cheers, brother. I'll drink to that. I like it. Should be free, though. Capitalism destroyed the country. Let's try communism now. Imagine being thick-skulled enough to play through the Fallout games and think they're a critique of communism. Imagine thinking it's promoting communism. Imagine being a brainlet. Oh, wait, you don't have to. Dude, commies infiltrated the US and nuked us into Mad Max. If you think Fallout is defending communism, you're nuts. It's about how ideologies and nations won't mean much if the whole world gets vaporized in atomic fire. So I don't really agree with that. Although I wouldn't say that Fallout is necessarily promoting communism, I will say that some of the better factions do have more socialistic leanings, and I'd say there's a lot in Fallout 4 that promotes the ideas of socialism, especially working with the Minutemen and the settlement systems where you all work the land together for purified water and to farm, and you defend these communities from raiders and mutants and stuff, and you literally all work together to build a better life for yourself without a massive profit incentive. The world of Fallout still has free market capitalism, kind of embodied by the bottle caps being currency, but I would definitely say Fallout is a criticism of capitalism in many ways, and it hasn't really delved too much into criticizing communism, while at the same time, I think the more moral factions do lean more socialist. Now, something that is big with Fallout is also talking about, of course, nuclear weapons and satirizing nuclear weapons and how ridiculous they are. You know, you have Vault Boy, who's just this very happy 1950s style cartoon, but his whole premise is to advocate nuclear fallout shelters, and there's a nice disconnect between the horrors of that reality and this guy promoting it as something nice. But modern Bethesda has even undermined its satire on the nuclear stuff as well with Fallout 76, in that you can actually launch nukes at each other. I can understand why some people might think this is further satire, but just bounce off this article that I thought was quite good by Polygon, How Fallout Lost Its Soul. So this is by Catherine Cross, and it says that Fallout 76 has lost touch with the themes amid its dismal launch and the many justified complaints of players who struggled with bugs. The game's empty world and abusive behaviour from other players is the dismal irony of its vaunted nuke system failing. The nuke loop, as developer Bethesda calls it, was envisioned as a difficult puzzle players would work through towards the end of their time in the game, but players acted quickly and launched their first nuke during the game's beta phase. But put it another way, the use of the atomic power as a toy, as something one has no responsibility for, is one of the chief subjects of Fallout satire. It pokes fun at the grimly comical way we misuse our awesome technologies. Thus, creating a Fallout game where nukes are used like so many broken toys is the final nail in the series' narrative coffin. Fallout 3's Fat Man, itself named for the bomb dropped at Nagasaki, straddled the line but stayed on the right side of things for a bit. It was effectively a rocket launcher for mini nukes. The thing was absurd and even comical from the concept to shape, and this was the ideal artifact of Fallout's pre-apocalyptic world, where rampant, irresponsible militarism could create something so deadly and so stupid. It was a weapon that made a point, but it was also another step towards the series losing its way. The Fat Man brought nukes into the hands of the player, where once Fallout had held them at a rarefied remove, they became just another weapon with ammo you could find almost anywhere. Encountering a nuke used to be a matter of utmost significance, treated with the kind of reverence, hence the cults that worshipped them. The nuke was Fallout's angry god, and you trampled in its garden at your peril. but now you can just launch one to clear out an annoying obstacle set by another player. Historically, the player had to live with the consequences of the old world's nuclear warmongers. Now Fallout 76 invites you to become one, and doing so doesn't change anything of consequence. The unthinkable is now just a button press that takes place during a glitchy online game that used to at least pretend to take these ideas seriously. So I do like the point specifically about Fat Man versus like the way these nukes are implemented in Fallout 76, in that the Fat Man launcher is just so stupid. It's like a Davy Crockett, for example. You might remember that from Metal Gear Solid 3. But it's even more ridiculous because it's like a slingshot. And just the thought of like shooting nukes from like a mounted launcher in a post-apocalypse where so much of the world is still like irradiated from nuclear war, while being named after one of the first nuclear weapons dropped on civilians. Like the article was saying, it does kind of straddle the line, but it feels like it's a decent enough satire about how ridiculous this stuff is. But in games like Free New Vegas, like nukes are not that common. You know, you have that whole megaton stuff where you can choose to blow it up in a nuclear explosion for the entertainment of wealthy people. In New Vegas, I don't really remember anything to do with nuclear weapons. I think the Fat Man was in it, but I didn't even really use this weapon because it was kind of hard to find ammo, and I kind of stuck to more like conventional weapons too. Fallout 4, of course, you saw the devastating impact of these weapons, which I think was nice. And I think even Liberty Prime throwing his nuclear warheads from his hand like a grenade, I think that still is like effective enough satire because he's just so ridiculous. But I do think like Fallout 76 and how it's like using the series now just for like microtransactions or like kind of like cheap gameplay things is kind of ruining the whole political message of Fallout. And like for a game that is so critical of corporations and capitalism, what they've done to the series with Fallout 76, how they've tried to nickel and dime people, how expensive these microtransactions are, how buggy the game is, and then obviously like tweeting stuff about like Liberty Prime on the 4th of July, it does feel like whoever runs Bethesda now is really not in touch with what made the series like so charming and also so interesting to people. And with like Fallout 4 to 76 and to probably Fallout 5, I am a bit worried the series is going to lose a lot of its edge and what made it so like funny and what made it such a great satire in the first place. Like, don't get me wrong, I really did enjoy the marketing for Fallout 4 and all the Vault Boy cartoons and like the throwbacks to like the 1950s. I enjoy all the cartoon stuff in the game and I like Fallout 4. I know a lot of people don't like it. I generally like Fallout 4. I just feel like the politics of it became far more simplistic than previous entries. And like I said, I'm worried for the future of the series. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of Fallout in the comments. Which one is your favorite one? Or what's your favorite like political commentary of the Fallout games? Could be like little anecdotes from quest lines or anything like that, or just parts of the lore and the environment. If you want to follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to join our communities, check out the Discord and the subreddit. Also, if you want to support my work, please check out my Patreon. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.